Hello and welcome guys to a new episode on SportPredictorFanatic. Today we're going to predict the matches that are going to be played in the Europa League on the Wednesday. With that, I'm also going to do a short, but a really short roundup of one of the cup matches, which of course Liverpool-West Ham. That's the biggest cup match besides the Europa League matches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to predict all of the Europa League matches, then I'm going to go into betting strategy, and then I'm going to talk shortly about the FA Cup between Liverpool and West Ham. So let's just get into it. First off, we have a Bodo Glimt against FC Porto. Bodo Glimt, of course, qualified for the Europa League by winning the Norwegian League last season. They had the chance to play in the Champions League, though, through qualifying rounds, but in their third qualifying round, they lost 3-2 in aggregate against Red Star Belgrado. The other rounds, as said, they did win. They were against RFS and Jagiellona. In the league, which in Norway is already almost done, Bodo Glimt are first. But they did actually lose last weekend 4-1, and those are actually second in the league, so that made it kind of close, but still they're pretty easy in the lead. Porto have qualified for the Europa League by becoming third in the Portuguese league. This season they have won 5 out of the 6 league matches, as they lost to Sporting 3 weeks back. Last weekend though, they did win against Victoria with 3-0. And what I think about this matchup, because they have never actually played each other in the past, I think Porto will get the first W between these two, as I think Porto do have the better team here. Also in a good form, so I think they will get the W. Then we have AZ Alkmaar against Elfsborg. AZ Alkmaar is qualified for the Europa League by becoming 4th in their Eredivisie last season. Elfsborg qualified by winning all 4 qualification matches for the Europa League, which is actually quite impressive, I'm gonna be honest. They beat Papos 8-2 on aggregate, then Sheriff Tiraspol 3-0 on aggregate, then Rijeka 3-1 on aggregate, and then the last round they beat Molde on penalties. AZ this season is doing quite well with 16 points out of 6 matches, and with that of course still unbeaten in the league. While last weekend they did beat PEC Zwolle with 2-1. Elfsborg plays in the Swedish league, and they are already quite far in the league. They are, like, after 23 games of the 30, they are 6th in the league. And last 2 matches they actually drew in the league. AZ and Elfsborg have never played each other. So I think AZ is going to get the first win in this matchup, as I think AZ just have the better team. Also, like, the formatting minute is just better, and with that, I think a pretty easy W. Then we have a Ludogorets against a Slavia Prague. Slavia Prague. Ludogorets have qualified for the Europa League by losing in the 3rd round of Champions League qualification and then winning in the Europa League qualification. In the Champions League, they first beat Dynamo Batumi 3-2 in aggregate, then Dynamo Minsk 2-1 on aggregate, then they lost against Karabakh, where in extra time of the second game they got 4 goals against them. That's actually impressive from Karabakh, but it's also like quite impressive to get 4 against you in the extra time, but oh my god. But then in the Europa League qualification they beat Petrokub 6-1 on aggregate. Slavia Prague have qualified for the Europa League by losing the final of the Champions League qualification. They had to play 2 rounds in total of qualification for the Champions League, where first they beat Royal Union 4-1, but then lost 3-2 on aggregate against Lille. In the league, Ludogorets are first with 22 points after 8 games. Last weekend they did beat Lokomotiv Sofia with 2-0. Slavia Prague are also on 22 points after 8 games and are with that first. And last weekend they beat Victoria Plzen 3-0. Ludogorets and Slavia Prague have only played each other once in 2016 in a friendly match where actually Ludogorets won 2-1. I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of knowledge of these teams. But I think Slavia Prague has got a better team. But Ludogorets does seem quite good at home, and it doesn't seem to be a huge difference. So because of that, I'm actually going to go for a draw right there. Then we have Manchester United against Twente. Manchester United have qualified for the Champions League by winning the cup. I actually don't know for sure if that is the reason they got it, but they were 8th last season, and the 6th and 7th place didn't get Europa, so I think it's because they won the cup. While Twente have qualified for Europa League by becoming 3rd in the Eredivisie, and then they lost in the Champions League qualification. So that's why they're playing Europa League. They lost to Salzburg with 5-4 in aggregate, which I would say is not even that bad. Manchester United are on 7 points after 5 matches in the Premier League, and with that are 11th at the minute. Last weekend they had a scoreless draw against Crystal Palace. Twente are on 11 points after 6 matches in the Eredivisie, and with that are 4th in the league. The last 2 matches were won by them, as last weekend they did beat Almere 5-0. Which was, of course, a good matchup to go against Manchester United. I think Manchester United and Twente have never ever played each other, but I think actually Twente could really challenge Manchester United here. Although I do think Manchester United will be too strong for them, and Manchester United will get the W. Then we have Dynamo Kiev against Lazio Rome. Dynamo Kiev have qualified by losing the final round of the Champions League qualification, but they did actually win the first 2 rounds. In the first round they were up against Partizan, which they beat 9-2 on aggregate, which is quite good. Then they beat Rangers, which is also pretty impressive, with 3-1 on aggregate, but then they lost to Salzburg with 3-1 on aggregate. Lazio have qualified for Europa League by becoming 7th in the Serie A last season. Dynamo Kiev in the league are shared first with 16 points from 6 games, with the last one being a scoreless draw against Lviv, and with that are still unbeaten this season in the Ukrainian league. Lazio are on 7 points after 5 games in the league, and with that are 8th in the Serie A. Last weekend they did lose though against Fiorentina with 2-1. Dynamo Kiev and Lazio have played each other 4 times, with 2 times being in 1999, where Lazio won both matchups in the Champions League group stage, and the last time these two met each other was also 2 times in 2018, where they met in the Europa League 1/8 final, where one match ended in a draw, the other one was actually won by Lazio, and Lazio with that went through. And I think even though Lazio at this moment are not in the greatest form and don't have the greatest momentum coming into this matchup, I still think they have got the better team and should get the win right here. Then we have the matchup of Anderlecht against Ferencváros. Anderlecht have qualified for Europa League by beating Dynamo Minsk 2-0 in the final of the Europa League qualification. Ferencváros have qualified for the Europa League by losing in their second round of Champions League qualification, but then winning the last Europa League qualification match they had to play. In the Champions League qualification, they first beat TNS 7-1 on aggregate, then lost 3-1 on aggregate against Midtjylland, but in Europa League qualification went through on penalties against Borac Banja Luka. And fun fact about this actually is that I actually was at the first match they played against Borac Banja Luka, as I was in Budapest at the time with 2 friends, and I'm gonna be honest, it was pretty sick. Like, I have some proof right here. This is like a fan card. Without this fan card, you can't get into the stadium. So you actually have to have a fan card before you actually can go into the stadium, which is pretty cool. And I've also, yeah, well, you had to blend in with them. So I got like this thing. So yeah, pretty cool. It was actually really fun. Maybe I'll put in some moments from that, like the atmosphere there. I'll put it in there because why not? It's just fun. But yeah, Anderlecht in the league are on 13 points after 8 games, and with that are actually 6th. Well, last game they had a scoreless draw against Charleroi. Ferencváros in the league are shared first with a perfect 15 points for 5 games. The other one that are first are Puskás Academy, but they've played one more game and, well, lost that game. Anderlecht and Ferencváros have played each other twice in the Champions League qualification final of 1995, where Ferencváros won the match away and then was able to hold the lead against Anderlecht with a draw at home, and with that qualified for the Champions League. I think Anderlecht are the better team here, but I think Ferencváros could actually pose a real challenge here, especially now Anderlecht are not in a best form, but I still think Anderlecht at home will get the W here. Then we have a Galatasaray against PAOK. Galatasaray have qualified for the Champions League by not winning the Champions League match, qualification match against Young Boys, which they lost 4-2 in aggregate. PAOK have qualified for the Europa League by first losing in the second round of Champions League qualifier and then winning in the Europa League qualifier. In the Champions League qualifier, they first won 4-2 against Borac Banja Luka. There you have them again. Then lost in the extra time against Malmo after being 5-5 on aggregate. And in the Europa League, they then won 6-0 against Shamrock Rovers on aggregate. Galatasaray in the league are doing a perfect with 18 points from the 6 matches, and with that are first in the league. Last weekend they also beat the second place Fenerbahce with 3-1, so that will feel really good coming into this matchup. PAOK are also first with 13 points from 5 games, so they drew one, won the other 4. Last weekend they beat Volos with 4-1. Galatasaray and PAOK have never played each other, but I think Galatasaray are the better team here, have the better form, and with that should get the win. Then we have Nice against Real Sociedad. Nice have qualified for the Europa League by becoming 5th in the Liga last season, while Real Sociedad have qualified by becoming 6th in the La Liga last season. Nice at this moment are on 7 points after 5 league games, and with that are 7th. Well, last weekend they did beat Saint Etienne with 8-0. Real Sociedad are on 5 points after 7 games in the La Liga, and with that are 16, so 1 spot above relegation. Last weekend they had a scoreless draw against Real Valladolid. Nice and Real Sociedad have never played each other, but I think Nice wants to get this win here because I think this is the perfect chance for them to win this matchup, as Real Sociedad are in a really bad form. And even though I do think Sociedad have got the better team, I think due to their form, Nice will get the win here. Yeah, and that's what I think. Then the last Europa League matchup of the day, that is Midtjylland against Hoffenheim. Midtjylland have qualified for Europa League after losing in their third and final round of the Champions League qualification. In the first round they beat Santa Coloma with 4-0 on aggregate, then won 3-1 on aggregate against Ferencváros. Boo! But then lost 4-3 on aggregate against Slovan Bratislava. Hoffenheim have qualified for Europa League as they became 7th in the Bundesliga last season. Midtjylland in the league are first with 21 points from 9 games, and with that are still yet to lose in the league as they've got 6 wins and 3 draws. Last weekend they did draw against Randers with 2-2. Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga are on 3 points after 4 matches, and with that are 15th. They have lost the last 3 Bundesliga games though, with last weekend losing 2-1 against Union Berlin. Midtjylland and Hoffenheim have never played each other, and I think Hoffenheim do have the better team, but they're pretty much stinking at the moment. And I think Midtjylland is like a pretty good team, especially at home, and really hard to beat, I think, with that. So I think I'm going to actually go for a Midtjylland win here. With that, I've predicted all Europa League matchups. So let's get into the betting part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be betting on 6 of those Europa League matches. The matches are with Porto to win their matchup. The odds for that is 1.91. Lazio to win their matchup. The odds for that is 2.01. Midtjylland to win their matchup, the odds for that is 2.50. Nice to win their matchup, the odds for that is 2.42. Ludogorets against Slavia Prague to draw, the odds for that is 3.50. Anderlecht to win their matchup, the odds for that is 2.06. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting €5 in total on this, and I'm going to be putting it all on trebles. You can make 20 trebles, so with that we have 25 cents on all 20 trebles. So if 3 are right, I will probably lose like €1 in total. But let's say I've got 4 right, I'm probably already making profit. So we're of course hoping for that. So yeah, that's basically the betting strategy there. But then we get into the other matchup that's really interesting today, which is of course West Ham against Liverpool. I've actually not prepared for this, so I have no idea what to say. But no, of course, Liverpool are in a good form. They of course won last weekend. They only dropped 3 points against Nottingham Forest this season. The other matches were all won, including the Champions League match against AC Milan. I think Liverpool are the better team here, especially now that West Ham is a little bit struggling as well. They've not had like the perfect start of the season, although I did actually think they would become 4th this season. They have not at the start to become 4th, but we'll see later on. But I think Liverpool do have the better team, even if they use like second-hand players, which I don't know if they will do, but I think Liverpool will win this match. And with that, we are coming to an end of this video. So I want to thank you all for watching. Please have a good day, and I will see you.